So one more tip with this assignment, though it's can be applied to any assignment, and it's some thoughts about how to do some various spacing or spacing issues that I've seen come up when people do input and output. So this could help you avoid some frustrations in that, and maybe just some things you didn't know. So, for instance, what do I mean by all this? Did you know that here is line 1, and when I print, here is line 2. If I want to put blank spaces in a print, like just lines that skip and have nothing on the lines, I can do that. So blank prints result in blank spaces, see, like right there. So that's one thing to know that is not always obvious. And another one is just that the spacing that you put, if you want something to get moved over to the right, for instance, you have to put it inside the quotation mark. So if it's inside a quotation mark, the computer checks out, uses the spacing. If it's not inside the quotation mark, it ignores the spacing. So this one will print to the left. This one will print over to the right a little bit. And there we go. Stays left, stays right. The only difference is where this quotation mark is in there. So that might help you line things up a little bit when you go to try to find out some spacing. Now there's some spacing issues with the input as well. So if I was just to say, okay, here's a word, and we do an input, let's enter a word. Now I find this especially if I don't have any punctuation on this side of my input. Let's see what happens here. My typing goes right next to my prompt for the input. That's not a big deal. It doesn't matter that it's not, but I have seen a lot of people when they run their programs or when they run other people's programs, they get kind of bothered by that. And so what they do is this. Now, first of all, I should make an output here to show you. So please enter a word, and I'm like turtle, and here's a word turtle. Okay, so this is fine. See the space right here? There's one space, and then there's one space here. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but there's no extra spaces. But what I see people do a lot is it freaks them out a little bit to be typing right there without any spaces, because like please enter a worder, and if you don't tell the difference between the blue and the black, that might look weird. So people will tend to put their own space in there and then do this. So then when it prints out, now we've got those two spaces. And so it's just something interesting. I never thought about that before, but some people really want to like put a space in there, which means you could put a space in it up here if you think people are going to do that. Or better yet, come up with something like a colon, maybe even a colon space, a question mark space. I kind of like to do almost like an arrow kind of thing where it shows them this is what I'm expecting. Something that will kind of give them the sense that it's okay to type without typing a space. Now, when we're dealing with words and strings, it's not a big deal. But sometimes I see people putting spaces in when they're entering numbers, and that can really throw things off. So, it's up to you, but you might want to try to remember to put spaces in your inputs. Now let's deal with this and the fact that every time there's a comma, there's also going to be a space. So when I run this again, see, that looks nice for typing, right, for that. But now we got this problem. That every time there's a comma, there's automatically a space in the word. And you can take advantage of that here, but then here you don't want the space when you can't avoid it. So there's going to be something we can do and that is there's going to be a word called sep. And so at the end of our print statement, when we're all done printing all the different print things that we want to put here, we can put comma separator equals, and then whatever I put inside these quotes is what will go between, like what will go in place of the comma here. So if I put a space there, that's the default. Nothing will change. It will act just like it did before. I do it again, and I still got the same problems I have. But I take out the space, and I just say quote, quote, or to say single quote, if it makes it a little easier to read. Now when I run it, it takes out those spaces, and I get the period perfect. Now I have that these two go together because I was counting on the space there automatically, so I have to go back in and inside the quotes put a space there. Interestingly, you can put anything you want in the separators, right? So I just find it awesome that you can put anything you want in between these things. So now I go, here's a word rousers, radish wowzers, and that's pretty awesome. So most of the time you're going to say, oh, I want nothing. I suppose there may be some times where you want to put something funny or maybe even useful, like a colon or something. If you were doing some sort of table, maybe you could set things up so that they always look the same, which might be cool. And we're going to get into some more options for that in input and output. Probably 3. Maybe I should do it in 2. But I haven't decided on that yet. Okay, one more thing, and that is if you are doing a really long line of code. So, once upon a time, there lived a beautiful horse that was the most beautiful horse in all the land. Okay, so I have this big long sentence, and when I go to run it, oh, this is gonna get me into trouble, I bet you. All right. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful horse that was the most beautiful horse in all the land, right? So we can't control the size that the person like is going to, like what size this is going to be. I mean, when we do things on our own, like most of the time, we're just running these things and looking at them ourselves, right? And so you could kind of adjust it to make it look good and make it do this, line return. But there is no word wrap built in. So as soon as it thinks that it's out of room, it's going to start doing this. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's not a great solution for that in Python. This shell is really just kind of a test environment in some ways, right? Like most people don't run games that look like this, or even, any sort of thing, unless you are making some sort of, operating system terminal kind of thing. So it doesn't really affect us, but if you are bothered by that, what you could do is just put each of these on a new line so that they're a little bit shorter, and then just kind of err on the side of short lines, so that even if it is like a big white space on the one side, that doesn't usually bother people that much. Right? Who cares? I have this white space, and maybe it's just nicer to read it like that. And then only if they go way down here are they going to get it cut off. One other thing that's just kind of cool is that if you're going to do this, you don't actually have to put so many print statements. You can actually do 3 quote marks, or again 3 single quote marks, either one, and then it automatically says, oh, he wants to do more than one line of code. And so we end up doing this. So now I can say, okay, until you see these 3 quote marks, I can just keep on putting things that I want to show up on my code. And yes, you can still, well, maybe, can I separate this? I mean, I guess I could still do that, and I'm still going to get my word in the middle, but then you have to put those three every time you want to end it. So it's a little trickier to do that, but it does work. All right, so there's some tips about spacing and some things that you can maybe do to help you make your output look a little bit better and even your input be a little less confusing.